Television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Massive human trafficking. It's a record 280.
Hey, Caleb, can I get a new clock, too?
The real numbers.
The numbers are segmented and they are fictitious.
I started my career in 1997 in the United States Border Patrol. It was one of the most violent times in recent Border Patrol history. I made my bones and my reputation on that border. I believe what is happening on the border today is intentional.
We have people in the United States of America that breed children in order to sell them.
Our own government is facilitating the absolute destruction of the American immigration system, and I can prove it point by point. I'm unafraid to speak the truth. This is just data-driven and experience-driven.
First, Caitlin, something I just heard from a senior Israeli official who says that according to Israeli assessments, there are very high chances that the entire Iranian general staff, including the head of the Iranian general staff of the Iranian military, and several senior Iranian nuclear scientists were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes tonight. I hear that again from a senior Israeli official who says that several senior top Iranian military commanders, including the head of the general staff of the Iranian military and senior nuclear scientists, have all been targeted in those strikes. And according to IDF assessments, there's a high chance that they've been eliminated.
I mean, that is really striking intelligence, if that is accurate.
Himalaya.
بالضبط.
Welcome to Truth with J.J. Carrell. End the show yesterday, thinking America's going to be on fire, go to bed, and Israel is bombing Iran. The first thought that I had was, are we going to be sucked in to another godless and endless Middle Eastern war? I don't know the answer to that. I have a special guest coming on in 10 minutes, retired Colonel Douglas McGregor. You've seen him on Fox News. You've seen him on all over every podcast you can imagine. Tucker Carlson's interviewed him. I've had him on the vault before. Incredible historian, incredible strategist. I can't wait to talk to him about what's going on. The world seems to be on fire, doesn't it? America is on fire. We are about to be in a explosion, if you will, starting tomorrow, Saturday the 14th, as billionaire like the heiress from the Walton family, Christy Walton of Walmart, has funded NoKings.org. There are about 1,000+ dots on a map at nokings.org where they are locations that are going to have massive riots tomorrow. She funded it. She funded it with the NGOs that our federal government continues to fund, which I have no idea why that's allowed. And then you couple this: Israel bombing Iran, Ukraine bombing Russia, Russia bombing Ukraine. We are on the precipice of a war. Then you look at all of the organizations that are attacking America in LA, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Denver, on and on and on, and then the other 1,000 cities starting tomorrow. They are all communist, Marxist, socialist organizations. Do you think that this is 3 separate events? Three things that are happening in a bubble? Or do you think they're all connected? Do you think that our adversaries, Russia, China, Iran, the Middle East, are not looking at what's happening in America and think, let's see how it goes tomorrow for them? Maybe they're completely on fire. Does America have the stomach to enter more wars? All of our military machinery, weaponry, ammunition has been depleted. Our gas, oil reserves are empty. Our military has been decimated. We finally hit a recruiting goal this year. Prior to that, we missed it by, I think, 40, 50,000 empty billets in our military. You begin to add up all the negatives, and it's overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming. We can't go to war. We can't go to war. 70% of our young men, 16 to 24, that would join the military, 70% can't join the military. Why? They're physically obese. They have some form of emotional ailments, or they're drug addicted to something, or they're taking medicines that alter their mind. 50% of the 70% that can't join the military have 2 or more of these 3 things. 70% of our men are obese, drug addict, or have emotional, psychological trauma that would preclude them from being able to join the military. At the same time, 30 million people crossed our borders in 4 years. 60 to 70% of them were single adult military-age men that are not beta males, did not come from a war-torn nation and their last job was Starbucks and writing poetry and having man buns. No. They came from nations where they were in gangs in Haiti and Venezuela, the Middle East, continent Africa, where they were using their weapon of choice, the machete, to hack each other to death. Their recourse on their government is always to riot, to burn, to loot, to destroy. We're witnessing that right now in America. We're all waiting on the big, beautiful bill because that's supposed to fund the deportations. Well, why didn't we do an emergency funding on day 1 of Joe Biden, of Donald Trump's presidency? In the big, beautiful bill, we're going to get more ICE agents. Okay. That is going to take you minimum, best case scenario, start hiring right now, 18 months to get 1. and it's more or less 2 years to really get the first person out of the academy. And then you need to get these men and women seasoned. And that takes approximately 3 years to where they're efficient, they're functioning on their own, and they know what the job is. 5 years. America cannot wait 5 years. Let's play this clip from CNN, also from CNN. Shocking, two clips in a row from CNN. Unbelievable. Let's watch this clip about Israel stating that this is not a one-day attack. Go ahead, Caleb.
Three new pieces of information have just come in here to our bureau. The first one is perhaps the most important. According to an Israeli source familiar with Israel's planning, quote, this is not a one-day attack. And Israel is planning for multiple waves of attack. So what we're seeing now, and there are some reports of explosions coming out of Iran, this perhaps just the beginning, according to an Israeli source who says this is not simply a one-and-done operation, and there will be more attacks in the hours, potentially it seems the days ahead. Again, that Israeli source saying, quote, this is not a one-day attack. In terms of the timing of it here, the Israeli government saw a window of opportunity to carry out this attack, both militarily and diplomatically. But you just heard from Kristen Holmes that the U.S. is making it very clear Israel was acting unilaterally and on its own, believing, at least from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that this is something that Israel felt that it had to do. And you heard the defense minister calling this, quote, a preemptive strike. Two other pieces of information. First, Israel's Transportation Authority has announced that Israel's airspace is closed, at least for the time being. It's unclear how long this closure will last. We have seen flight trackers. There are no aircraft in the air right now over the skies of Israel. So this confirms what we had suspected. Israel's airspace will be closed. The only indication they give is that there will be a 6-hour heads up before the airspace reopens. And then finally, just a short time ago, the last time I was talking to you, we heard an alert on our phones. That's Israel's Home Front Command putting out an emergency alert, and it essentially says, stay close to protected shelters. Stay close to shelters or somewhere to go for safety if there is incoming from Iran, whether that's ballistic missiles or drones or other options. But Israel clearly taking this very seriously. In fact, our producer in Tel Aviv said people are going to the mini markets there and stocking up. So the country itself is bracing for whatever lies ahead here.
All right, Jim.
From the beginning, when concern has amped up about Israeli plans to attack.
We are in the throes of a potential World War III. What's stopping our adversaries from coalescing and creating if in for a short term, a partnership? You have the whole Western Europeans, nations fighting against Russia, causing them to deplete manpower, resources. You have Iran being bombed by Israel. Those Middle Eastern countries are going to coalesce. You have China that's looking at America, where they already have 100,000 of their PLA soldiers here inside of our walls. What's stopping those nations from joining together and saying, we've had enough. We've had enough of the West, and now it's time to go to war. Where are we going to get our manpower from? We have military personnel that have been on 9, 10, 11 deployments. These men are exhausted. We just spent $300 billion in Ukraine for weaponry. What are we going to do? We're going to print trillions of dollars and destroy our economy? There's a lot of questions that have to be answered. Douglas McGregor will be on shortly, and I want to ask him these questions. The one thing that I do find promising on some way is, Donald Trump is pulling away from Israel. I don't hear the braggadocious, we got Israel's back forever and we're going to do it. No. Hold on a second. Donald Trump needs to put a muzzle on Lindsey Graham as fast as he can. We are looking at massive trouble in the world and in our home front. Before Colonel McGregor comes on, I want you to please go to the sponsors that help us stay on the air, that help Worldview 2 platform grow and continually get better. And that is shopbellagrace.com. Shopbellagrace.com. I don't know, Caleb, if you have whatever commercial you want to play today. It could be Abby or it could be Dr. Lucky. If you can just play one. I believe in this product. I use it. I use the elixir, and I use the restorative sleep gummies. Needed that last night as I'm watching Israel bomb Iran. And I'm thinking, what does this lead to? And to calm my brain down, I have to take some all-natural, non-toxic, non-addictive sleep gummies. I love this company and their product. ShopBellaGrace.com/truth. Go ahead and play this commercial, please.
As a practitioner with a very large practice, at the very end of the day, I tended to be a little bit worn out. I wasn't covering from taking care of patients. In January, before we pre-launched the company, I was one of the very first people to get the 15-day samples. And right away, I was connected to the Bella Grace Collagen Elixir. Just an overall feeling of wellness, but also a little more energy. I recovered in my workouts, sleeping just more soundly, and then waking up the next day ready to take it on. For me, it was the power of three: the cat's claw, the astaxanthin, and of course, the best, most studied Verisol collagen on the market today.
ShopBellaGrace.com/truth. All right, I don't have a lot of, his time is very valuable, and I appreciate Douglas McGregor coming on our show to discuss so many things. So, Douglas, thank you very much for coming in, sir. I appreciate your time today.
Oh, thanks, JJ. I'm happy to be here. When I was listening to you talk earlier about the Bella Grace, it struck me that the basic food groups that sustain most of us in the Pentagon on any given day are caffeine, sugar, and preservatives.
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't gotten around to all this healthy stuff yet. So.
Oh, I know. So that's why we're trying to push it out. Now, sir, there's so much. I mean, you and I were just going to talk about the riots and talk about what we're going to do, and all of a sudden the world is on fire. Can you give me your perspective? Because I love your historical perspective and your military perspective as well. What is your take on this attack on Iran, and what does it look like for America?
Well, I've just finished penning an X. I've been under tremendous pressure to say something, and I really don't like to say much until I have a lot of facts at my disposal, you know. And I finally put one together, and essentially I've tried to get people to understand that this is effectively the equivalent of Pearl Harbor for the Iranians. Just as we were effectively caught napping on 7 December 1941, they were caught napping. They were surprised. And I think that this is the opening act in what is going to be a regional war. Now, how long will it last? That's anybody's guess. But this is the beginning of the very thing that most of us have feared. Now, the second thing is that it looks as though President Trump was complicit in this surprise attack. It appears that Witkoff has always been an Israeli agent, and that that was part of the deception plan to create the illusion that anyone in Washington, particularly inside the Trump White House, was interested in doing any sort of deal with Iran when they weren't. And so they managed to pull this off very successfully. The problem is that we are now unambiguously a co-belligerent in another war. In this case, in Israel's war, not just with Iran, but I think what will eventually become the whole Islamic world, plus Russia, maybe China and others. The other thing that's really striking that I think people should take note of is something that my good friend Dan McAdams at the Ron Paul Institute mentioned. He said, don't you think it's interesting to see the similarities between the so-called spider web attack by the Ukrainian SBU or secret police inside Russia and the attack that was launched inside Iran by drones provided by the Israelis? And I think he's got a good point there. So I think we're seeing more and more evidence that the two conflicts, the one in Ukraine and the one in the Middle East that's developing now, are linked. Then finally, it's very clear, and this is something that we do need to discuss, that a lot of so-called soft targets inside the United States are going to be attacked internally. We're going to see terrorists do things to us. I'm sure they'll use drones. They may use any number of different tactics and technologies. But I think we have to look carefully at the nuclear power generation industry in the United States. We need to look at, obviously, military installations, especially those that may be far from the coast, that people don't really expect anything to happen. I mean, a place like Fort Riley, Kansas, or Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, spring to mind as excellent examples. I also think they'll attack power grids. And I suspect that we'll discover that there are large numbers of people among the millions of illegals inside our country that are only too anxious and willing to participate in attacking these soft targets inside the country. And then, of course, you have the old standby shopping malls and any place where people gather where there's just no real security against external attack.
That was one of my main concerns when this started off shooting last night, and I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking, okay, is this connected at all? And you're saying that you think that it could be connected. My fear is this, sir, is the illegal aliens that we have brought into our country. 200,000 special interest aliens from the continent of Africa and the Middle East that are from Muslim-dominated countries, and that we believe that we're tied to terrorism, and we release them. 200,000, I believe you can go up to 1 million that have crossed the border undetected and let go. There has to be a connection between what is transpiring in the Middle East and I call it the green light to go to the cells here in America. Do you think there is that direct line, and is that your fear?
Well, there are undoubtedly some direct lines, but I see it as much larger. I think we're going to find that there are some radical Latino groups that want to destroy the country or refashion it or reshape it into some sort of version of what they think Mexico held on to back in 1846. And they will obviously cooperate with the terrorists. The other thing is that, you've got a growing racial divide in this country. People just don't appreciate the levels of hatred and bitterness and anger that you find in many non-white communities, aimed at white people, obviously. So then you have the drug cartels. So the drug cartels have an interest in this kind of disruption. This is very good for human trafficking, back and forth with women and children. This is very good for the drug trade. So I don't think it's just a question of a few Islamist terrorists who have gotten into the country recently. I think it's all of the above. And I think we have to understand that for different kinds of reasons, corruption, criminality, terrorism are all willing partners in the same enterprise. So I think we're going to have our hands full inside the country, particularly as this war lasts. And this is the thing that is so depressing when I talk to people. Oh, well, the Israelis have demonstrated their supremacy. The Iranians have to come to the table. You could make the same argument about the Japanese in 1941. They demonstrated their ability to move thousands of people and hundreds of ships, thousands of miles across the Pacific, attack and destroy targets in Pearl Harbor. And therefore, they demonstrated their supremacy. Well, they did, and that supremacy lasted for almost a year. And we fought some very difficult battles until we finally geared up and responded. Today, it's a little different because I don't think it's a function of your scientific industrial mobilization capacity as much as it was then. But there's a lot of technology and a lot of capability in Iran that's never been seen and never been adequately employed. I think we're going to start seeing that. And I think others in the region will join in. I mean, Saudi Arabia condemned this attack, as did, I think, other Arab states. It's only a matter of time until everybody eventually is drawn into this thing. And you get this horrible regional war with global impact, as well as impact right here at home. And we are not a very cohesive society right now, as you and I have discussed.
I think you mentioned this, and this is my fear, is that this regional war spreads, and then we get into Russia deciding, okay, hold on, the whole world, Western world's attacking me. Maybe I need to, this is my alliance. And then China decides, okay, we're in alliance. I could see this manifesting into a World War III. And then we have a country that is divided by racial and ethnic lines here in America, and religion and language as well. What do you think the probability of this, people saying, oh, this is just a regional war, spiraling into a World War III? And then my second part is this something I've heard you speak with me, and I've listened to other articles or other interviews like Tucker Carlson, where you have openly stated, we're not ready for a war. We can't sustain a war with manpower, and our technology and our equipment has been devastated. So that's a two-part question. Do you think we're going to end, this could end up in a world war? And if it does, how do we fight it? Or are we even ready to engage in such a battle?
Well, let's go to the second question first, which is the most important. Are we ready? Well, let's start here at home. Your bailiwick, where you've been operating with the border police, with ICE, with police forces up and down the borders and around the country. You have experience here inside the United States. Do we have reliable forces, armed, trained, equipped inside the United States to deal with the potential disintegration of order in our country that could come as a result of what we're discussing? I don't think we do.
No.
We're not even talking about, do we have enough weapons? Do we have enough ammunition? Do we have enough rockets or whatever it is, missiles? I don't think that's the issue. The issue is what are the forces that are going to preserve order here at home? How reliable are they? How well trained are they? How well led are they? And I don't have the answer, but I defer to you. What do you think? Why don't we stop here and just talk about that first point?
Well, I think that's a great question back at me. Okay, let's look at the numbers. Okay, we have 6,000 ICE officers. 6,000 ICE officers. There's 50 million illegal aliens in our country. There's less than 15,000 Border Patrol agents. So now we're at 21,000 just for illegal immigrants. Now, this is my greatest fear, and I've written about this, and I've talked about this, and people at first were just like, you're off your rocker. What happens, sir, when you bring in 30 million people in 4 years? You have the Vance and Trump now have ratcheted up and said there's 21 million came in 4 years. That was down from 11 million or 7 million last month. They're finally catching up. Let's just say that my number's off, 21 million plus 22 million that were here in 2019. So now we're at 43 to 45 million and change that the government stated. This has been my fear. When we go to war and we remove all of our men and ship them overseas to war, or they're in their getting ready to installations and preparing to go to war, who is going to maintain and corral the enemy that's here in America? And to answer your question, we are the 21,000, and if I show you 21,000 people and I show you 45, 50 million, who wins that war? They do. Yeah. And the enemy is inside of our country right now.
Well, I did put this X out. I have trouble saying X. I always want to say tweet, but now it's X. And I did put something out that said that Trump's first act right now ought to be to bring back all the ground forces from overseas. And I say that because we're not going to go in on the ground anywhere in the world anymore. All you do when you do that is present an easy target array for your opponents. They're very vulnerable. We can't protect them. So we might as well bring them home right now and deal with what's here. So if you brought back the Marine Corps and the Army ground force, you might have effectively 630,000 that you could employ in this process. That's still a very small number. And then again, you have to look at the reliability of these forces and the people who command them. I'm not very confident, frankly, about the senior leadership of the armed forces. I haven't been for a long time. Too many of these people are too self-interested too concerned about how do I make my first $1 million when I get out as a general in the private sector. Who do I saddle up with? Which lobby is in a position to enrich me more than another? And they normally think in terms of defense industries or foreign lobbies like the Israel lobby or others. You know, we have a lot of people that go to work overseas in Saudi Arabia and other countries. So I don't I don't know what the quality of that force would be, but I think it would take us some time to get it back, get it organized properly, and then go through the personnel and find people who are going to do the job. That's one problem. The second problem, as you pointed out, is how do they react? Do we have anybody at the top in the government right now that we all trust? Congress is awash. Congress can disrupt. Congress can obstruct. Congress is wallowing in corruption. They're all on somebody's payroll. They're just useless. So we have to turn ultimately to the chief executive. That means we turn to President Trump. Now, is President Trump Andrew Jackson? Is he U.S. Grant? Who is he? What can we reasonably expect him to do? And this is very frightening to me because at the moment he's running around taking a victory lap with his friend Bibi, you know, and I think that's a disaster. I have no doubt that we had a role in all of this and we are now a co-belligerent, sadly, but I certainly wouldn't have advertised it. I would have minimized it. And I certainly wouldn't have made speeches about it. But he's doing it. And so if you're sitting anywhere in the world right now, and this goes to the external question, if you're a Russian, if you're Chinese, it doesn't matter, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, anybody in Asia, anybody in Southwest Asia, anyone in the Middle East or North Africa or Central Africa, what do you conclude? Well, you conclude that you had better organize and cooperate and coalesce into some sort of alliance before you too are destroyed by the United States as Israel's proxy. And I don't think that's something we want to have happen, but I think it's going on right now. And so to your question about what kind of a war does this become? Well, it starts out initially between Israel and Iran. And I think in the weeks and months ahead, it will become regional. It will bring in all of the Muslim Arab states. I think eventually you'll see Pakistan take an interest in what happens. I think the Turks will get off the dime and finally decide that they have to stand up and be counted. The Russians, they have their own problems in Ukraine, but that's not going to stop them from aiding or assisting the Iranians. And if you're in Moscow, you say, well, do we sit here and watch the United States and Israel pulverize Iran out of existence? I don't think so. And then you have China. And by the way, if you've looked at already the oil futures, as I predicted a few weeks ago when I gave this presentation called No War with Iran, it was only like 7 minutes, but I went through it and explained that the moment something happens, the oil futures are going to go crazy. We're going to see prices rise. So you're going to see inflation take off as never before. And I would finish by saying that when Louis XVI became King of France, people said, long live King Louis, as long as the price of bread does not rise. So I think President Trump needs to be very careful, which it's not in his nature. But he needs to understand that the inflation monster is now wandering around out there. It's growing stronger by the day. It's going to affect everything. It's going to affect supply chains. And then you add to that, we go back to the beginning where we were before and the kinds of concerns you've expressed and I have about what happens here. This is a disaster for the United States. Now, there are going to be people out there listening to us, J.J. Carrell, oh, well, that'll never happen. You know, in January of 2022, I was interviewed by Dimitri Simes at the National Interest. And people said, do you think the Russians will go into Ukraine? And everybody, well, maybe not. Oh, I don't think so. They'll never do it. It's too damaging. It's too risky. They got to me and I said, absolutely, they'll go in. And what I'm saying right now is that the problems you and I are discussing in outline under the first topic, what happens here at home, all of those things are going to happen. They are going to happen. And the question is, what do we do? And Congress, forget it. They're not going to be of any help or assistance. They're too busy with other interests other than the national interest. So then it falls to the White House. And what will the White House do? I don't know.
I think that's the scary thing is the last answer you gave. I don't know. Right. So I'm talking to someone that I really respect, and I've watched you ad nauseum on interviews, and I haven't given interviews lately, and they're asking me what's going to happen. And my answer to them is, I don't know. And they have that same kind of fear look as I'm giving you. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. I don't know what the reaction is. Okay, let's play this out, sir. So we see the nokings.org. We've all seen the map. You and I texted back and forth to each other. Let's say I'm hearing there's between 1,000 and 1,400 dots on the map. Let's say 10%, 5%. Let's say 75 cities added to the 10 to 15 cities that are burning now. So about 90 to 100 cities literally go up in flames, and they're on fire. What's the reaction of Donald Trump? I mean, does he federalize all of the National Guards across America? We just saw the courts just say, no, you can't do it. You got to turn it back to Newsom. We're in a constitutional crisis as the United States of America is on fire, sir. This is happening tomorrow. This isn't, I wonder if it's going to happen tomorrow. The only question is how many cities are going to burn.
Well, you brought up the other issue that nobody really wants to discuss, and that's the Constitution. I talk to people all the time. We have to go back to the Constitution. Okay. Well, the Constitution was written between 1787 and 1789. It really described government as it existed. It was not a brand new approach by any stretch of the imagination. We had, 3-4 million people living in those colonies at best, and they were overwhelmingly English-speaking and Protestant. Now, what are we today? Well, we're a very different nation. And this Constitution, as it was written then, doesn't make a lot of sense in these kinds of emergencies. And that's why, I think we're looking at a state of exception. And this is an old Roman concept from Roman law, that there are times when the nation is in danger, and everyone in the Senate agreed that when the nation is endangered, we should appoint 2 consuls or 1 consul. Sometimes they had 3. And these men must rule and have absolute control if Rome is to survive the conflict, the crisis. And this is what they did when they were under assault by the Carthaginians and Hannibal was marching on Rome, and it looked as though the whole place could go down into ruins. We don't have this concept, but I think that's what we need. And the first step in that direction is the Insurrection Act. And the Insurrection Act was created in 1807 by Thomas Jefferson, and very few people know why. But there was a man, he was the vice president, his name was Aaron Burr. And Aaron Burr went down to what we today refer to in retrospect as the Louisiana Purchase area and decided he was going to create his own independent empire of which he was going to be the king or emperor. In other words, it was a full-blown rebellion against the United States of America. And there was fear that he would raise armies out of the people that lived there. There weren't that many, but there were enough to threaten the small country that we were at the time. And so he drafted the Insurrection Act. It was passed so that he could protect this new fledgling state in 1807 from this maniac, Aaron Burr, who wanted to form his own independent country. Well, it's time to think about the Insurrection Act very seriously, because the 2 words martial law do not exist in the Constitution. Nowhere in the Constitution does the President of the United States have the right legal authority to declare martial law. That's for a reason, because at the time, we didn't need it. It wasn't necessary. And nobody wanted it because we had just been ruled by the British crown, and we didn't want to go back to that. But the truth is, by the time you get Jefferson, things are looking rough, and they're unraveling. And then, of course, we went into the War of 1812. These were not easy times. So the Insurrection Act was very important. By the way, we've used it for many things. In 1871, Grant initiated the Insurrection Act because he was trying to protect free black men from the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, this thing is being used for all sorts of purposes. We need the Insurrection Act. But before you do that, you have to have a strategy. You've got to have a plan, and you've got to have the right people in place. I don't think Donald Trump has any of that.
I want to end on that, if you will. You and I talked about this offline, and I think this is a very legitimate question. Do you think there is no plan? Do you honestly think that there isn't? And I'm going to give my audience my perspective before you answer. I'm looking at what's happening on the border. I'm looking at the deportations. They're anemic, and I come back to this, sir, every time when I'm going through this exercise in my brain. There has been no plan. There was no plan for airplanes, for detention facilities, for deportation, for movement of these millions of people. There was just this idea that we were going to go into communities and extract people and have no backup. So I think there is, when it comes to the illegal immigration issue, I don't believe there was a very well thought out plan. And I know I'll get a lot of pushback on that. Are you agreeing that on the perspective of insurrection, governing this nation, looking at the totality of the international community, that we don't have a plan?
Yes, we have no plan. Now, let me explain why. Immediately after the stock market crashed, Herbert Hoover directed the removal of what turned out to be almost 9 million Mexicans from the United States. Now, why did he do that? Because they were holding jobs inside the United States that he recognized Americans were going to need. He said, if I leave these people inside the country, these foreigners, and they are being paid to do things that Americans now need money to do themselves, there's going to be ugliness. In other words, there will be racially charged, culturally charged anger directed at these Mexicans because American citizens will want their jobs. So he didn't decide to deport 9 million Mexicans because he didn't like Mexicans. That's nonsense. Herbert Hoover was not that sort of person. By God, for God's sakes, he was a Quaker. And having been one myself, or at least educated as one, I know damn well that that thought never occurred to him. He was acting in what he thought was a prudent manner for the interests of the American people, as well as these 9 million Mexicans. This happened under FDR, another 3.5 million, under Truman, another 2.1, something like that. And finally, Eisenhower in the 50s, 1.1, 1.2 million. In each case, the United States Army was involved. And it had to be involved because the Army had the transportation assets, the organization, the leadership, everything that you needed. And of course, the National Guard fell under the Army. And that worked very well. We were able to do these things with remarkably little difficulty. It wasn't perfect, but it came off reasonably well. We have to have something thought out along those lines. And that means you sit down and you figure out who you're going to put in charge. You just don't say, well, just pick General so-and-so over here. He'll get the job done. We did that before we went into Vietnam and throughout Vietnam. We've been doing that for 50 years. And the generals that we select are catastrophes. They're not worth a damn. So we can't do that because you can't be sure that any of these highly politically sensitive officers who've come up through the ranks for all sorts of reasons, none of which have anything to do with killing anybody on a battlefield, can be relied on to do anything that makes sense. So you got to have a come to Jesus meeting in the White House. New people have to be found. A strategy to execute has to be developed. And then you move forward. That should have happened as soon as he came in. He wrote a lot of executive orders, but President Trump has a bad habit of assuming, well, I signed the executive order and it's done. No, it isn't. Just because you sign an executive order and pass it out doesn't mean anybody's going to do anything that you said. Doesn't mean that there's a plan. It doesn't mean that there's a strategy. And this is where we are right now. And by the way, this strategy has to involve all the organs of police and intelligence. It all has to come together. Now, while you're doing this, at this point, you're now talking about being embroiled overseas in a regional war that you don't want. Look, I can't conceive of anything worse than a regional war right now for us, for anybody, but certainly for us. Yet that's where we're headed. And that regional war is going to spill into the United States. As we've discussed, we're going to see that happen. What do we do at that point? I have no idea because I don't think anyone's thought it through very carefully at all.
I agree with you. I believe there's no plan. And as each day goes by, sir, I continue to say we have historical precedent on what we're dealing with, and yet we do not acknowledge that historical precedent and at least go back and say, what did Hoover do? What did Eisenhower do? How did they do it? What was their messaging? How did they physically line things up? I think Donald Trump has some great people around him, but he needs some new people with some very, very outside the box thinking that have historical knowledge as well. So, sir, thank you very much for your time today. I could talk to you, sir, for hours and hours. I learned so much from you just from your historical perspective, but thank you for taking 30 minutes for my audience today.
Sure. Thank you, JJ. And let's hope for the best, no matter what.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Have a great day, sir.
Bye-bye.
Colonel Douglas McGregor. I tell people all the time, you want to know about the war, you want to know about Ukraine, Russia, you want to know about the border, you want to know about historical events, you want to know on what to do, how to do it, then you listen to this man. You listen to Colonel McGregor. That's the truth. Wow, I can interview him forever. After listening to Colonel McGregor, if you don't feel a need to be prepared, I really don't know what to tell you. I honestly don't. Let's just bring Chris in from sat123.com. Chris,
Hey, JJ, good morning.
Good morning, man. We wake up to Israel bombing Iran. I'm talking to Colonel McGregor before you came on. I don't know how much you heard of that. And I asked him what's going to happen in America as America begins to burn. And he says, as America begins to burn, I'm paraphrasing what he says, as America begins to burn, you have a massive Middle East regional war where their citizens are in our country illegally. He says our nation will begin to get embroiled in it. We will catch on fire, which is happening right now. It's literally on fire. Tomorrow, all the riots begin. And he says our infrastructure will be hit, meaning our cell towers, water supply, you name it, electrical grids. What do you think about that? Do you think he's off, or do you think he's spot on?
No, I think he's 100% accurate. And JJ, we've been talking about this for years at this point, watching these tensions build up, watching, the troubles escalate in the Middle East. And I think anyone who's been paying attention isn't surprised by this move. Israel had said repeatedly that they weren't going to let Iran have this kind of capability. And that's what they were doing last night. But there's no doubt that I believe your guess was right, that this can and will escalate around the world, including here. And there are certainly, reports of multiple sleeper cells and individuals who are here, whether they're from Tehran or they're sympathizers. But it's been made clear that these guys are here to disrupt us. And look, we've been seeing disruptions, ongoing for the last 12 months. Attacks on the power grid, on all of our utilities, the water supply, and so on. So this is not going to improve that situation. It's only going to make it worse. And so I think your guess is absolutely right, JJ.
Tell my audience at sat123.com. Give me two products that you have that you're like, okay, if you need to have something, you need to have these two. What would you say?
I mean, out of all the products, I would say one, a sat phone. Everyone needs a sat phone. Look, if you can't communicate, you are literally dead in the water. If you're not able to communicate, you won't be able to receive information. You won't be able to reach out for help. You won't be able to connect with loved ones, family members, friends, business colleagues, whatever. If the cell towers go down and don't come back up for any extended period of time, there is no other option. The satellite phones that we have, both Iridium and Inmarsat phones, the latest ones, the same ones used by the U.S. military and first responders throughout this country and around the world, will cost you $1,000 to $2,000 anywhere else, JJ. But we are still offering those phones for free with activation. So you can get the Inmarsat iSat Phone 2 phone for free with activation. That's over $1,000 savings, and you're paying just $85 a month right now. And that will give you up to 150 minutes per month. So that's the first product. The second one would be the Starlink Gen 3 portable internet, high-speed internet unit. And again, this will give you full access to the internet no matter where you are on Earth. You just point this thing at the sky, turn it on, and you connect to multiple devices can connect to one unit. You can connect your phone, your laptop, whatever it is. Because if you don't have service on your phone, that means you're not going to have voice or data. But you can use the Starlink as a hotspot, and you can receive data on your phone. You can get data on your iPad or your tablet, your laptop, whatever it is. And again, you can connect multiple devices to this. So look, the sat phone and the Starlink unit, both essential. And both units, by the way, the Starlink Gen 3 is free with activation. I think you're paying starting from just $165 a month. For your data, you're getting up to 200 or 500 gigabytes of high-speed data. But you're saving, $600-700 on that unit. With those two devices, JJ, you will be able to stay fully connected and informed. And they're the only two things that are going to do it. And you can get those, by the way, at sat123.com. That's SAT123.com. Or if you want to call in or you have any questions, you can call 941-841-0844. That's 941-841-0844. But I would say, JJ, especially this morning, we've been rather busy. There's a lot of people who get what's going on. And we don't have unlimited units available. They don't make, tens of millions of these sat phones like they do the iPhones. They only make a few 100,000 a year. And when they're gone, they're gone. You have to wait till next year. And there's the Starlink 3 Gen 3 units. We have a good stock of those, but again, they're going quickly. So, if you've been thinking about this at any point over the last year, now's the time to take action, JJ.
As I let you go, and I appreciate you coming on every week and talking about your company and your product, because I believe it is so essential. Think about what you and I could possibly be talking about next week. We were on together last week. If I would have told you last week, hey, you know what? When I see you in 7 days, Chris, we're going to talk about LA on fire, several cities across America riots, and then America is going to start burning on Saturday. Oh, and by the way, we now have a brand new regional war in the Middle East where Israel has bombed Iran, and Iran now is saying, I'm going to bomb Israel, and then all of the powers are coalescing. You and I would I don't think I'm ready for that, right? What is going to happen in 7 days, Chris? And maybe that's the best advertisement for being prepared and having sat phone and having equipment from Sat123 is you and I can't answer that. Just like Colonel McGregor said, I said, what is going to happen? And he says to me, I don't know. And I think that should scare you more than anything, listening to people of positions of authority, experience, and knowledge tell you, I don't know. That scares me more than if he just says, well, we're going to be in a full-blown war. At least I can visualize that. I can't visualize, I don't know. That's frightening.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And if we'd bet on these things a week ago happening, we'd have probably made a lot of money. But that's the whole point, right? You just don't know. If I had to guess, as what's going to happen, I would say that most likely we're going to see people take advantage of this situation around the world. Because whilst we're distracted and Israel's distracted and everyone's distracted with this, they can get to work on launching new cyber attacks, attacking utilities, and so on. So things like that. That'd be my best guess, but you're absolutely right. We don't know. No one knows. So the only thing you can really do for sure that will make a difference is be prepared. So check out sat123.com today and or give us a call, 941-841-0844. But always appreciate you having me on, JJ.
Awesome. We'll see you next week. Let's pray that the world calms down. I don't see it happening, but we need to get on our knees and not only pray, but be prepared. Thank you very much, Chris. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks, mate.
Sat123.com/JJ, sat123.com/JJ. Great company, great people. The thing that I love, for multiple things I love about the company, you call them, guess what? You're not hitting 17 numbers, and you get someone that works in customer service that speaks English. Holy cow, they live in Omaha, Nebraska. They live in San Diego. They live in Nevada. They're not in Bangladesh. What a strange, unique concept that is, to have customer service take care of your customers. One of the other sponsors that I have before I end this. This show went by so fast. Is I have patriotsmade.com. I want you to please support the sponsors that support us. Patriotsmade.com. Take back your power. Great example. We are about to go into a burning of our cities. Well, who funded that? One of the big funders was Walmart. The heiress, Christy Walton. Walmart's distancing themselves from her. Okay, I'll give you that. However, she still gets her money from them. The box stores hate you. How do I know that? Because the box stores and the products and companies that they sell in those box stores gave billions with a B to Black Lives Matter, billions to defund the police, billions to the Democrat Party. Stop funding our enemies. Go to patriotsmade.com/JJ. Buy products that are made in America by Americans that are not poisoning you. I think that's a fair thing. Give a company your money and they're aligned with you and they're not going to support causes that hate you. Go to patriotsmade.com/JJ. I'm going to close out in just a minute. I'm going to show you a video. And Caleb, it lasts about 1:45, so we'll just close out and end this. Another week is going by so fast. Sometimes I can't believe it. Like I'm getting ready for my Thursday or Friday show, and I'm like, what just happened? Where did this time go? And one of the things that, and I'm a guy that gets my news from several websites and X. X has become my clearinghouse, if you will, not Google. Google suppresses everything. And I'm watching on X, this pops up, and this is a gentleman by the name of George Janko. And I saw this video, and he talks about his podcast and his interviews are about God and Jesus and preparing yourself and getting yourself right. And I saw this video, and it really struck me because I'm assuming that many of you are like me and you have goals and desires and you want to be used by God and you want to have your talents harnessed by him and be used. And sometimes we're on our time and we're not on God's time and we get frustrated. I get frustrated. I get anxious. I want you to listen to this and I want you to carry this into the weekend and know that what he is saying about God is absolutely true.
When you were talking about like the unknown and like just going with the flow, it kind of reminded me of the situation that I was in the same kind of boat. I was in the position of like, I'm going to give it to God and let God deal with it. And then I realized that God wasn't showing up. And I was like, God, you take it. And he wasn't showing up. I was like, God, I don't know if you've heard my prayers, but I've been telling you to take it. And then I read a Bible verse. And through that, I think the Holy Spirit was telling me this. There was a man who's blind and Jesus spit in the mud. He took the mud, he put it in his eyes. And he said, go to the river and wash your face and then you'll have sight. The man didn't get up and go, hey man, I can't see. Like, how am I supposed to get to the river? But he just got up because he had so much faith. And when he was walking, any obstacles or any situation that was going to prohibit him to get to the lake, it got moved out of the way, or he was able, through God, to get to the river to wash his face. And it was that place where I was like, I'm the blind guy. I cannot see tomorrow. I cannot see if my plans are going to succeed. I cannot see if this relationship is going to work out. I cannot see this. But God said, I don't need you to see. I need you to have faith that I'm going to guide. I think that if you're going to get back into your relationship with the Lord in a more deeper way, I would say present your plans to God and say, God, I don't know, and I do flow with the unknown, but I have this desire, Lord, that I want to be here helping people with mental illness. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I trust that this is in your will. You've made me a man who could help people. So I'm going to get up and move like that blind man, not knowing the future. And my mom used to tell me, if you give it to God in a circumstance like that, he delights in this because he could reveal himself to you. And dude, you move with great faith. You already do. That's a natural ability that God gave you. I'm saying tighten it up, give it to God, and watch him blossom that garden.
You are watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Welcome to Technocracy News with your host, Patrick Wood. I'm your co-host, Logan House. Today, we're going to be talking about a new documentary that you're featured in, Patrick. Technocracy. This is the article about it. Technocracy, the first ever full-length professional documentary, and it's called The Agenda. And then after we talk about that, we'll go into the Bilderberg meets in Europe, June 12th through the 14th. Then we have Mark Zuckerberg is personally building a dream team to create AGI and ASI. And lastly, it begins, AI is taking thousands of jobs. Will it take yours? How are you doing today, Patrick?
Really good. Really good. We talk about technocracy every single time, and it gets more intense as we go along. And this movie, this amazing documentary, it's not mine. I didn't do it. I had nothing to do with it other than sitting for an interview. But these people, obviously, they took lots of my material as background information for the other presenters and for the narration as well. And so that's very gratifying to me that my research has reached other parts of the world. This came from the UK. Oracle Films is a totally professional organization, and they have great staff. Obviously, they have great videography, and I wouldn't be surprised if this movie gets an award somewhere along the way. So I would hope for that, right?
It's definitely getting a lot of traction. I've seen it's going pretty viral all over X and social media.
It really is. On YouTube alone, they have in 7 days now, there's over 200,000 views just in this instance. However, it's been reposted everywhere.